Welcome to Coffee, Eggs and Inspiration. It's a weekly show that goes out over YouTube and as a podcast over all of the major channels. And each week I get to sit with an amazingly inspiring person and listen to them tell their story and share it with all of you. This week is no different. I'm joined by Giovanni Donaldson.
Yes.
Thank you. As usual, I'll give Giovanni a bit of an intro, a bit of a background. Oh, but I do have actually some news here. For the first time, I have eggs, a boiled egg and some scrambled eggs. I haven't actually eaten any yet. I may nibble during the interview, but I did promise in a couple of videos that I'd do this. So, fantastic new milestone for the channel. So Gio was born in Italy, actually grew up like me in New Zealand, so we have that connection.
We did.
Though we never met.
No, we didn't.
At that time. We went to the same school, I think, for about a year.
Yeah.
But spent a lifetime, an early lifetime at least, growing up in the idyllic surroundings of Auckland in New Zealand. After University of Auckland, fell into consulting. And very quickly moved into Bain & Company, which is a great strategy consulting company in Sydney. So that was the first move abroad, and then subsequently to Italy, to Rome. And we'll get into the background to that. Giovanni Donaldson, you get the sort of Italian thread there. After a while in consulting, moved into an airline in a rather exotic location, which we'll talk about. Ultimately, extending that sort of interest in travel by coming into the Virgin Empire with Richard Branson pretty early on, and did a number of roles over a period of almost 9 years, I think it was, right?
Just shy of a decade.
Yeah, and founded a number of the Virgin Empire brands. Then branched out on his own, founded Side Story, which is an interesting experiential travel channel, I guess, a website that was ultimately acquired by Mr. and Mrs. Smith.
Yep. Just last year. Gosh,
it's yeah.
I was
going through. I was saying to Gio, I was going through the LinkedIn just sort of get the bio this morning, and I was thinking I'm going to be late for this meeting. It was like there's so much there. I was scrolling down and down. You've had a 3 lifetimes of experience here. So after Side Story, has done a portfolio of directorships and advisory roles. Currently a partner in Founders Intelligence, which is part of the Founders Forum, started by Brent Hoberman and a few of his colleagues.
That's right.
Okay, I've missed a whole lot of stuff there, but that's the abridged version. It's a pretty impressive and extensive archipelago of experience, I would say. Take us back. I mean, what was going through your mind when you were at university, thinking about where to go next? You went into consulting.
Yeah, the degree I studied was in commerce and law. So I thought something in business. Actually, many of my friends and colleagues went into law. And that seemed like a natural thing to do. Yeah, okay, like you do too. Yeah, and that I think professionally that made sense. You needed to get a professional qualification. Good to get that in early. And as much as I enjoyed studying law, and I enjoyed thinking through the logic and how to present the case, etc., I was more drawn towards the business side.
Right.
And
why's that?
Well, at university, I think it was just the problems that I think it was being able to get into them more meaningfully.
Yeah.
That isn't to say you don't in a legal context, but you are sort of, it's just in a different approach.
Yeah.
And so, these ideas of working for the likes of McKinsey and Bain and BCG and others, LEK was also quite big at the time in Auckland.
These are all management consulting companies.
Correct. I hadn't really come across them before, and friends were talking about them, and I started looking into them, and I thought, well,
what is that?
Yeah, what is that? That sounds like a great start to one's career, and so that was sort of an intro into that's a path I was going to take.
Right. It is a great a great intro into business, because you get to sort of do business tourism, don't you? You get to work with different companies.
Totally.
I had a very similar start, actually. I stumbled and fell the other side of the line and went into law, and it took me quite a while to recover from that. Still recovering. Actually, it was wonderful.
Recovering. You meet many of them, actually, recovering lawyers.
It's a good foundation. It's a good foundation. And then you were drawn almost, pretty soon on into Sydney.
Yes, that's right. So earlier, I mean, just prior to joining Bain, I was doing work with a local and highly regarded firm. RHE and Associates was a lot of fun. About 120 people doing IT, as it was called back then. So IT consulting. There was a few sort of tackling strategy and IT strategy. But as much as I enjoyed it and the people were fantastic, I think the thing that Bain offered, or the opportunity of working for an international management consulting, was just being a bit more global and being able to lift your head up and see what was going on in the world. And a very easy step was moving to Sydney, sort of from Auckland. And I also felt like I needed to, I'd spent just the way that my family's circumstances were set up, I just felt like I needed to do a step, but not go halfway around the world straight away. And so moving to Sydney was a good first step for that. And so sent out my CV, and Bain & Company wasn't based in New Zealand at the time, and did the whole video conference call in a suite, as it was back then, and I was lucky enough to be flown over.
Those big Cisco suites.
Exactly right. Yeah, with a controller in the room, he's trying to manage the internet connection, I guess, as it was that ISDN or something. Anyway, went through all the rounds of interviews, and yes, was lucky enough to be selected and joined in '99.
Amazing. Yeah, you've triggered me on this memory. Many people watching this may not know what a Cisco suite is, but these were telepresence suites.
Yes.
I think they cost about $250,000.
Yeah.
And it was sort of 3 or 4 screens stitched together. An incredibly complicated series of numbers that you had to enter in order to reach somebody on the other side. And of course, today you just do it over a smartphone. How times have changed.
No, it was a suite in the university, and it was just how to get in there and organize it, and there was someone there, and so it all worked.
Nerve-wracking. And this is the late 90s, early 2000s?
Yes, that's right. Yeah, so
which of course is the internet bubble.
Yeah, and I remember actually I have a very distinct memory being at drinks one evening and having just joined, and someone said, "Gio, why are you joining Bain & Company? You should be out there, doing internet stuff." And it's like, I mean, he made a very good point. I mean, and looking back, had I known what I know now, maybe a different path. But as it was, I was excited to be at Bain.
What stopped you at the time?
I think I don't know if I would really. I just don't know if I was in those circles that were seeing what was going on in that way. But certainly arriving in Sydney, being exposed to it in the way that I was, yes, I sort of woke up to that, and but I was still very excited about being at Bain, and already, after going through the first trainings and other things, really felt like I could learn a lot,
right.
And so I was very excited.
Yeah, it's a great company, all right. Lots of friends who work there, but then a shocking turn of events, or not shocking, but surprising anyway. You fell into an airline called Tucker Airlines, and it was based in.
Yes, El Salvador. So I mean, so there was a stint in Sydney, a stint in Italy. So I transferred there, which was a little unusual at the time, and I really enjoyed the two experience actually. The former was quite deep in terms of the engagements. The second was much shorter, exposed to lots of different things in Rome, exactly. Yeah. But after a couple of years there, as much as I love living in Italy and go back frequently for family and other reasons, working in Italy always it's not as easy. I think you share similar views, and even Italians share similar views, by the way. So I don't think we're outsiders in that respect. But so I was looking for a change, and I was lucky enough to be called by an old friend and mentor at the time I'd worked closely with when I was in Sydney. He had moved, and a bunch of guys that I knew well had moved to El Salvador, so that's the location.
That's not going to get edited. This is the beauty of YouTube. Somebody just busted into the room and said, We've got this book. Oh no, we haven't. Sorry. So here we are.
Here we are. It's fine.
El Salvador.
El Salvador, indeed. And you know, for me it was less. I mean, El Salvador was a great experience. I'll tell more about in a sec. But for me, it was just exciting to work back with, you know, these old buddies, these friends, in an industry that I was excited about, as challenging as it may be. And look, a chance to see the world, and you know, that was a sort of a blessing.
Was it dangerous at the time, or was that just my ignorance?
No, and look, you know, I probably was not. The short answer is no. The short answer is no. It was actually a relatively calm period. You know, post-Civil War, things had calmed down. You know, there was still some niggles, but generally speaking, it calmed down. And certainly pre everything that we now know subsequently, and some of the challenges that the country and the whole region actually has faced. But at the time, it was relatively benign, and we travelled the country. We did have a guard, you know, so we did have that. But to be honest, you know, nothing happened. And I think, for the whole time, a group of us expats were there from various different countries, and not only from Taka, but other multinationals who were based in the time. I mean, I was only aware of one incident, and it was, you know, a wallet in the street, and that could have happened anywhere, to be honest.
Right.
So yeah, it was a great experience.
That's the first top tip from Gio Donaldson on travel: capture country early after the Civil War and travel with a guard.
Yeah.
So you're there for a couple of years. Actually, yes. in Italy, you're very modest, because you didn't say this. You actually took some time out and learned Italian.
I did.
So you're bilingual.
I did. Yes. I've become bilingual. I mean, I was exposed to Italian when I was younger, but never in a way that allowed me to learn it as a language. And small family story. I was separated from my father when I was quite young, and so. And whilst we had moments to sort of reconnect in our past, I never really had that opportunity to sort of get to know. Did
he speak English?
He did. He was. That's how we met my mum. Actually, he was a tour guide in Pompeii and that sort of area. Right. Anyway, that's how they met. And long relationship then ensued. But so he spoke English, German, and French, and others. But for me, it was an opportunity, you know, get back to my Italian roots, you know, learn what it was like to live in Italy and be part of that, learn the language, get to know my family, aunties, uncles, cousins, the whole thing. Yeah. So it was a great experience, and you know, Bain helped make that happen actually. So Brilliant. It was amazing that they allowed that. One challenge was, though, I had to learn Italian. That was the one condition, and so I did this intensive Italian course, and nothing like being
Rosetta Stone or something.
It was similar in lingua, private teacher, the whole thing. But I think the most formative thing was just being around, you know, my family who didn't speak a word of English apart from my dad. So for me, it was, you know, I was
sink or swim.
Yeah, exactly.
Gimbal died. Now we're reset. We're up and running again, and we're back in El Salvador.
So look.
Well, actually, we were
in Italy, but we're on our way back to El Salvador. So look, I learned Italian and was able to, you know, live and work in Italy, which was a dream come true. That was great.
Fantastic. And from Taka Airlines and the experience in El Salvador, you moved to Virgin.
Yes.
Virgin Atlantic.
Yes, that's right.
How did that connection happen? How did they?
Yeah, so I'd worked closely when I was in Australia. I worked closely with airline execs there, and said as it was in the day, and many of them had taken on senior positions within the Virgin Atlantic airline. I reached out. I needed to come back to Europe, Italy more specifically. My father wasn't well, and so I was looking at options to come back, and these guys were, you know, had some work that needed to be done. So I joined initially as a consultant, and then joined full time. But that's how that worked. And
So that was in London.
It was in London. Yes.
And you met Richard Branson. So Richard Branson.
Yes, I did. I mean, it wasn't until I joined Virgin Group that those opportunities arose. But I met him, and it was very, it was a dream come true for me growing up in New Zealand. I don't know if you have similar memories, but Virgin was sort of, you know, Virgin Records, and
absolutely,
you know, the airline certainly back in the day. I mean, there was a lot, and so it was super exciting to eventually, you know, work at Virgin Atlantic, and then subsequently.
Yeah, I remember it was probably one of the first business books I read, actually, Losing My Virginity.
That's right, that's it. Same for me too, I think. Yeah.
And what an inspirational story of the sort of the small against the big, and everything that followed is incredible. So you started in the airline,
Yes.
Virgin Atlantic.
Yes.
How many planes did it have at that time?
Yeah, not as many as you might think. I need to think back, roughly 30, 35, I'd say. But the difference was, and what made it quite unique, is they were all long-haul aircraft. So, Tucker may have had the same, but they were all short-haul. So, single aisle, these were twin-aisle 747s.
Yeah.
So they were...
Is that more profitable, the long-haul stuff?
It can be, certainly, and the transatlantic route is certainly the most important market globally. So, Virgin Atlantic, flying across the Atlantic. It had many other routes into Asia and Africa and others, but what was, so look, it was unique in that respect. Long haul and sort of tightly located in Heathrow.
And that then, I mean, Virgin's obviously a conglomerate. Is that the right word for it, do you think? Or is it a series of companies?
Yeah, I think from the outside people might think of it as a conglomerate, which is not unreasonable. I mean, Richard sort of has been for decades almost a spokesman for everything, and to a large degree that makes sense. But actually internally it's set up more as branded private equity, branded venture capital, that sort of a mix.
Yeah.
And so really it's a small, effectively head office or family office, which was where I was working. And then the various operating teams and the various businesses, and the main difference is they have other shareholders.
Yeah.
So each business, and in some cases to the extreme that it's just a license agreement to use the brand. Exactly.
Okay.
And then in some instances majority control.
And you went into Virgin Holidays, after Virgin Atlantic, right?
When I joined Virgin Group, I was some of the responsibilities I had to take on was to help manage the portfolio, and so one of those was Virgin Holidays. So I joined the board there, and
Gotcha.
but it was more in relation to my work more broadly as
Gotcha.
helping look after the travel side of the Virgin Group.
So what was the highlight for you working in the Virgin Group? You were there almost 10 years.
Yeah.
Really interesting company.
Yeah, I mean, look, incredible people. That was a massive highlight, and obviously very exciting to be in and around the brand, and there was lots of fun things, and I think from a professional experience, quite different. So for that, it was definitely
different.
Different, just culturally. There was, it said a lot. It's a little cliche: work hard, play hard. But it was a little of that, right?
Yeah.
This idea that you could do great work, but you could also have a balance and have good lifestyle, and you could find a way to make the two work together. And that was particularly appealing. But one massive highlight, to go to your question, was did a number of different things. I was able to launch a business with Richard, but I think ultimately it was together with a core team of us, we did a really important deal for Virgin Atlantic, and that was helping facilitate Singapore selling, Delta buying, doing a big joint venture, reorganizing some things internally. But that was very transformational, I think, for the airline, for the group. And that was very exciting to be a part of, right? Something really big and chunky like that.
Very formative time in the history of the airline.
Yeah.
And the business you launched at Virgin was digital publishing, right?
That's right, yes. And that was, I was caught up with them the other day. There was a bunch of people very senior within Virgin. I had this idea that, we should consider how we can get into publishing, how can we get Richard's voice, how can we talk more about entrepreneurs, maybe use the airlines as a platform. Suddenly the iPad was coming out, maybe that's the future, maybe we should do something on the iPad. And together with head of brand at the time, Catherine Solway, we worked on building an idea that maybe we could just do more in and around content, taking on this new technology. We found a partner to do this, and we launched a magazine in 2010, online, iPad only. So it was pretty amazing, pretty new stuff. Holly got involved. Richard was there, of course, and we had a great launch in New York, and a lot of positive feedback, kicking that whole thing off. Yeah.
So it sounds like am I right in saying that was the first time though that you kind of did a startup, right?
It was
within a corporate environment, but did that give you the?
Yeah, I don't think they called it back then, but felt like an entrepreneur in residence of a sort.
Right.
But yeah, totally. It was amazing.
And did that fuel you? Because what happened next is you took the giant leap outside, I think.
Yes, that's right.
And did Side Story, your own business.
That's right. Yeah. So linking the two things together, I think you're totally right. I was like, that was an amazing experience, and we learned a lot from that. And having done the deal, as I mentioned earlier, it was time to take on some new challenges. I wanted to get closer again to technology, and Side Story, which was a travel experiences site, felt to me solved a problem that existed in the value chain of travel.
So talk a bit more about that. What was the value proposition there?
It kicked off with a personal experience. I was traveling with my wife in Seville, and I was looking for something new and different and unique for us to do. And my idea was a photographer. I thought it'd be great to see Seville with a photographer, learn how to use the camera, and I thought that would be just a different lens on the city,
so to speak.
But it was really hard to find, right? It was really hard to organize, and I just did it all, found a way to make it work, and we met this guy, fantastic. But I literally reached out over the phone and said, look, you look like a great photographer. He was a Getty, would you be up for this? And he said, yeah, totally fine. Did it. But then there's this whole really awkward moment when after it, which was a great experience, you had to get out the cash.
How much do I pay you?
It just felt weird, but also awesome at the same time. I said, look, maybe there's just an opportunity here to make this more seamless and easy for people like me to do this globally. And so in essence, that's what Side Story became. A whole bunch of amazing insiders, experts in their field, and as travelers, you or I could find these people and have a way to meet them and do experiences and get an insight into the city.
It sounds, just instinctively, it sounds really labor intensive, because I'm imagining you sitting on the phone calling photographers and cooks and all over the world and sort of stitching this all together, wasn't it?
So it was to start, and I was fortunate to meet a couple of amazing people. Ex-Wallpaper helped in sort of that first cadre magazine, indeed. And help sort of bring that first cadre of insiders, and then actually there is a little bit of a virtuous circle that kicks in, and a lot of people when they saw it started reaching out, going, well, how can I get involved?
So they started
getting involved. I think initially yes is the answer. Sometimes early stuff doesn't scale, and that would be a good example of that.
So how did you get it to a scalable stage?
Well,
was it the network effect of people then started coming to you?
Yeah, so there's a little bit of that. We got very, very good at figuring out qualifying early who were the right kind of people. We never actually expanded this, but in the end, Mr. and Mrs. Smith acquired the business before we did it. But what we realized actually was that even and they've sort of since taken it on, but there are individuals out there who have these amazing superpowers, and you can find them and interact with them, so that's great. But what they also are amazing organizations, quite small, but are set up in cities around the world, and actually that's an area where you can scale quite more efficiently, because they're already set up locally to do this. They've already figured out who are the right people, and so I guess it's a network of a network. But to scale more broadly, the idea was to kick off at the sort of top end, quite high quality, or quite unique and different, but then sort of open up in a more scalable fashion for other people to sort of step into the fold. Again, that was sort of future vision stuff. One day that might happen.
What was the period between starting the company and being acquired? Because it feels short.
It was, and a little unusual actually. Probably roughly 3 years.
3 years.
3 years.
And were you bootstrapping it? Were you getting funded? You were bootstrapping.
I bootstrapped to start, along with one of my co-founders, and we raised some funding as well. Some early angel funding to help in that process. So that was where we got to. There was a few other ideas on how to raise additional funds, which didn't quite work as expected, but that's part of the journey too. And the acquisition sort of came across two fronts, some professional, some personal too. I was expecting our second, and I think it was just one of the, having gone through a couple of different instances of where we could take it to the next level and not having quite worked out, I sort of felt like the Mr. and Mrs. Smith thing was too good to turn down, and it was just a good opportunity. It was good for them, it was good for us. And it worked. So,
well, congratulations. To take a business from a standing start to acquisition in 3 years is impressive. Without any serious funding, angel investment maybe, but not big funding. And that's taken you into the current phase of your life. You're a director of a few companies. Us Two, Wayfinder. I think you're still an advisor on Mr. and Mrs. Smith. Is that right?
More informally. Yeah. No, I was shortly after the acquisition, but that ended, and so we chat. But yeah, more informally.
So your proper day job now is at Founders Intelligence.
It is, yes.
We'll link it below. Tell us about it.
Yeah. So Founders Intelligence. Look, Brent Hoberman, for those who don't know him, was founder of lastminute.com many years ago, a very successful entrepreneur himself, and an investor in a number of other significant businesses. But in and around that, he created the Founders Forum, which is a network event that's taken place in London and now in other major cities around the world for the last 15 odd years. And as part of that organization, he created a consultancy called Founders Intelligence.
Right.
And I think for the story that I'm sort of getting and hearing is, a lot of corporates would attend these. A few select corporates would be able to come to these events where founders could come and speak. I know you've had Ricardo and Reid Hoffman and Richard Branson and others, very significant players, I guess, in the entrepreneurial community come to these single days. Big corporates come too, and they're like, I want some of that magic. I want some of that secret sauce.
Absorbing the
exactly.
energy, innovation,
and innovation. And so long story short, Founders Intelligence helps in that process, helps think about future strategy, corporate innovation, but does it in such a way that helps those companies understand how they can work with startups as a way of sort of energizing and activating very quickly on some of these ideas that they may have internally.
Yeah.
So that's Founders Intelligence at its core.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
In closing, there's probably people watching who are at an early stage in their career or maybe thinking about starting a business themselves. Any parting wisdom?
Parting wisdom?
Right.
Parting wisdom. I think, it's something that I wish I had read a long time ago. Peter Drucker, famous management guru, wrote Managing Oneself. And it's an HBR article. I think it's one of the top read. But the core thing about it is knowing your strengths. And so I think for anyone sort of early in their career or even midway through their career, I think it's just really reflecting, certainly at key moments, what are your strengths? Playing to strengths. I think there's a lot of talk. I mean, I'm sure you and I have both been in these situations where, strengths, great, but what are my weaknesses? And then how to mitigate those. And those are important exercises to go through. But I think what I'm learning and have learned is just really think very thoughtfully about what are your strengths, play to those. I think both personal and professional happiness comes through getting that right, getting that balance right.
Finding your sweet spot.
Totally.
Well, it's an impressive archipelago of a career with, I'm sure, many more islands to go yet.
Yes, exciting adventure.
You're an inspiration, Giovanni. Thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you very much. Thank you, sir.